There are two challenges we have here. One is this session is immediately after lunch, so I'm sure a lot of you are tending to fall asleep, so I have to make it interesting. The second is this was supposed to be a fireside chat, and now I've been asked to come and give a speech. So, so I think the solution to both of these problems is to keep this session very interactive, rather than being one-way gyan on how to build brands and how to create. I'm sure you have more insights collectively than I would have on my own. So I'll start with a few notes or few thoughts that I have on this subject, and then would really love a very strong participation. So it can be a fireside chat between you guys and me. So you can ask questions and let's see what comes out of the discussion, right? Yeah. So yeah, a little bit about GOAT. How many of you have heard of GOAT Brand Labs? Okay, some of you haven't raised your hand. So I'll give a small brief on what GOAT is. We realize that D2C as a market is really emerging very fast, and there are a lot of brands which are emerging, primarily because now you have a direct connect to the consumer. When I was growing up in the industry, distribution was a key thing. That if you are building a fashion brand and if you did not have the money to either get into your own stores or to get into the large department stores, there was no way you could build a brand because consumers would not get to see the brands. But times have changed. Now you can create a good product, directly reach to consumers through Instagram, and have your own Shopify website where they can come and buy you or be listed on the marketplace. So D2C is coming up very fast, and we believe that the way business is moving online, and I've seen it up close during my time at Flipkart, Myntra, that the adoption of online and the problems it solves for the consumer are immense, and therefore we are still at a nascent stage in terms of penetration of most categories, and therefore by 2030 the market will be multiple times what it is here, right? So now to service that amount of demand, what is needed is you need great brands. So you have on the one side traditional brands which have a struggle to change their whole way they approach this new channel, because they have their offline partnerships, their current way of working to manage, and therefore they are not as fast or as agile as the D2C founders. And obviously every time there's a niche and the niche player comes in, they do things differently and therefore make it difficult for the large established players, right? So for example, if you look at, and I'll give a lot of examples from fashion industry, please pardon me for that because I have been in that for a very long time. For example, product creation, right? Most brands have a year-long cycle, and they pride themselves on the fact that, 1 year before the research starts, and then they have this show where they show the whole collection to their trade partners, get their feedback, and then finally get into production. So from mind to market is about a year. Maybe sometimes they crunch it, it comes down to 9 months. Whereas things are changing so fast now that D2C brands are able to really assess what's working, what's happening, what are influencers talking about, what are celebrities wearing, and therefore create what the consumer wants at a much faster cycle. And if a consumer is dependent on fashion, or the consumer wants to wear new fashion, they would definitely choose brands which give them something new. There are consumers who want to buy big brands, big logos. They would really depend on large brands, even though they are late. So there are different kinds of customers. So therefore, there is a lot of change in the way the whole cycle works, and that is where a lot of new brands are innovating, right? Similarly, communication. Most brands, therefore, if they've done a nice line, they are very proud of the collection they have made, and therefore now they have to talk big about it. They would get a large A-lister celebrity who would then, there would be hoardings, campaigns, etc., which for the new age customer is not as authentic as a lot of people talking about the new collection. And therefore there comes the role of this new age communication channel, which is people that you look up to in terms of their styling, their dressing, their fashion sense, It could be big celebrities. It could be a lot of people you follow who are not big celebrities yet, but you really trust what they talk about. And these are guys, when they start talking about your brand, it is much more authentic. You feel that it's not that they're doing it because they have been paid a huge amount of money, but they're doing it because they like it and they can carry that style which they are promoting, right? And therefore, the connection with the consumer is much better. So two examples of how the whole way in which products are created, and second is how they are taken to the consumer, is totally changing a large part of the industry. And there comes the role of D2C, where similarly, if you take an FMCG example, I'm told that large multinational companies have product development cycles which run into years, right? They would do these famous consumer researches, and then they would do research on every aspect, including, how the font should look like, what the packaging should be, and then they would launch a product, because you don't want to fail, you want to be sure. Whereas new age D2C brands are launching multiple products in a week, and therefore really looking at consumer data to decide which ones to retain and which ones to let go. So a lot of creation is now happening with a lot of consumer feedback and real-time consumer feedback, which is where the new age working is very different from the traditional working. And therefore the teams or the businesses which don't have the overhang of large cycles of change and are much more agile will have an advantage. And as this market is growing well and consumers are loving it, you will see that there is more and more acceptance for the things that you're doing, and therefore D2C comes into play. Now, connecting this whole thing into effective marketing is therefore, I would think that the first thing is that the brand should be authentic. They should really believe in what they're talking about, because you can't get away by hiding behind one large campaign. You are now going to talk to customers almost daily, every minute, right? Every post you put on Instagram, everything you do on the packaging, everything is out there, and you cannot try to be someone you are not, because when you're talking once in a while, it's fine. Consumer says, okay, इनका इस season का campaign आया है, I believe them, and they are satisfied with it. But if you are a D2C brand and you are constantly on your channels and you are constantly launching new products, you have to really stand for what you are. So for example, if you have identified an opportunity of being say sustainable brand, now therefore you have to really ensure that you really believe in it and you are authentic, and you have to continuously live up to what you are promising. Otherwise consumers will figure out that it's a marketing ploy and they won't buy it. So in the past, you could do a big campaign, you could talk about green one season, and you could talk about something else next season and get away, but not any longer. Second is that you need to really use the whole ecosystem, where there is a whole new way of reaching out to consumers and talking to them, and therefore be effectively engaging with the whole ecosystem of influencers or people who people trust on various things. Now it's not a solved science. Everyone's learning, but then you have multiple examples of brands which have done really well by partnering with this ecosystem. You also have multiple examples of influencers globally who have been able to convince consumer to buy products that they talk about, rather than people directly first identifying the brand, right? So that's the second one. And third, in this list of things that D2C brand need to do differently is have an eye on consumer data. When you sell on marketplaces, you get some insights on what is selling, at what price, at what rate. When you sell in offline, you get that same data maybe every month, right? Because you can't have access to, across channels, you can't have access to live data. But when you're selling from your own website, you get that data every minute, right? So I think the more and more you're able to organize data to be able to tell you what's working and what you should do more, which means that changing the whole way you function, right? If you are going to be agile to do more of what is working and do less of what is not working, then you need to have that kind of a supply chain. You could have that kind of agility in being able to increase, decrease quantities where things are working, stroke not working. And therefore, this then becomes a very fast feedback mechanism where consumers start to see more of things that they loved and see less of things that they did not like. And therefore, consumer sees that this brand really understands me. I think, therefore, supply chain management is also an effective part of communicating, because product launches is a part of marketing your brand or your proposition to the consumers. So I would think of these 3-4 things as important. And as I promised, I've already spent 10 minutes on one-sided talk, but I'll leave it at this, and I'll open the house for questions and anything that you want to discuss regarding the things I talked about or anything that I didn't talk about. Happy to touch on that subject. Yeah.
Insightful. And I wanted to ask, like, one thing in this, one thing that has been making rounds in discussions is quick commerce. So you focusing mainly on, apparel brands. So how there has to be a limit to it? Like, let's say it is at the moment when you do it in retail stores, you just touch it and you buy it. But what is the level of patience that customers are expecting from D2C brand? Because we have got from 10 minutes to same day delivery to next day delivery to general last mile, which takes 4 to 5 days, let's say pan India. So, like, in terms of in apparel, what do you see the timelines should be?
Okay. So I'll talk about delivery both for apparel and non-apparel. I think, service and speed are two parts of an axis, right? So one of the things people want is selection and people want speed. Now you can't give infinite selection at speed to the consumers, right? So therefore there is always a trade-off. So even if you look at quick commerce, you only get the head products, right? If you wanted something which is not a fast selling item, unlikely that the quick commerce guys would, because it won't make sense for them from unit economics point of view to keep it in so many dark warehouses. So therefore things that are predictive, which you need often, like for example Maggie, you know that your kids need Maggie every time they're hungry, and therefore things, data will know that, and therefore those things will be put there. So coming to fashion, there are product categories where you can predict demand. Undergarments is something that you know that people might need very often. Men's t-shirt is something that you may say, okay, somebody wants a Benetton green t-shirt, so you can have that. But if the starting point is that I need a new dress, and if you start predicting that and putting it in the closest warehouse, you are limiting the option that consumer has. And therefore the driving force is the selection and not the speed. One of the data points that we used to see in my Flipkart days is that when does the NPS drop? At that time, it used to be that if you deliver within 3 to 4 days, the NPS is similar, but if you go to 5 days, then there is a drop, which means that people are okay to wait 3 to 4 days. However, consumers are always evolving, right? When quick commerce was not there, they were okay with deliveries in 3-4 hours. So therefore, consumer will keep changing. You have to just keep an eye on how the market is moving. But every category will not behave similarly. There would be different levels of expectations. It's like if you go to a fine dine restaurant and you order for food and he gets you in 5 minutes, you will say, "Kisi aur ke liye banaya hua tha, itni jaldi kyun le aaye," right? But your expectation, because there you are looking at somebody spending time to build that. So you have to really look at which category, whether it's a head product or a tail product, and then what is the general norm in the market and what can be stretched without affecting the consumer's experience in that category, and therefore design the delivery strategy. So in some of our brands in fashion, we take the head products to multiple warehouse and try to deliver within same day. But if we try to take the long tail fashion items and start to put in multiple warehouses, it will be suboptimal, and you might solve for some customers, but over time it's not feasible to spread because there's no data on how that product did in the past.
Thanks, Rishi. Very nice discussion and your insights of your long journey in fashion lifestyle. You took a bet on early bet on lifestyle D2C brands, and we can see its path to success to become the fastest unicorn, becoming a brand aggregator. What do you think beyond lifestyle brands, the ecosystem available for them or the potential available for them, or GOAT is taking a bet on non-lifestyle brands like home, electronics? Mostly I see you've taken pitch on that. Adding to that, I see this long or very strong growth of fashion lifestyle for D2C brands in India. You say cross-border is one of the biggest opportunity for them, because I had a cross-border enabling company, and a lot of brands I've been bringing to India. But now seeing the reverse trend, people are from global markets are asking for and very widely accepting Indian brands in their countries.
Yeah, so two parts to your question. See, sorry, I started by asking, do you know about GOAT? I didn't talk about it. So in GOAT, what we do is we realize that a lot of D2C brands are coming up, but beyond a point for them to scale, they need multiple things. And sometimes those are things not available to them easily, which means a founder ends up, and many of you would kind of align with this, ends up managing his warehouse, his fundraise, some bank limit, finding experts who would help him on digital marketing if the CACs are going through the roof, talking to people from the industry who know this stuff. So there are many elements, similarly cross-border, going into offline, quick commerce. These are many areas where a D2C brand does not have access to information. They can get some advice here or there, but then they constantly need support in that. So as GOAT, what we do is we thought there is a good opportunity to partner with founders, get this brand together, and build capabilities which these brands can use. So that's our story. And if you are building capabilities, there are two kinds of capabilities. One, capabilities which work across segments. So capabilities in warehousing, logistics, finance, etc., can work in any category. But if you really want to create next level of expertise, then you have to really specialize in a few categories. And given my background and the background of some of the people in our team, we believe that fashion and lifestyle is a very, very large category, almost slated to be more than $100 billion. So therefore, with such a large market opportunity available in the next 7 to 10 years, the more we focus on a few segments and build capabilities, it is much better than just being, because capabilities like warehousing, logistics, etc., there are many people who would offer that, who are into that business. But for running a brand end to end, you need capabilities on design, you need capabilities on brand marketing, on influencer management, cross-border for that category. So therefore, that's what GOAT is building. We are in our early days. We have acquired about 20 brands, and they're doing quite well. Coming to the cross-border question, again, you have to ask the question, what problem are you solving? So if you're launching a Western wear brand, which is not so well known in the US market, you have to think of two things, that whether the Indians will buy it or the general population will buy it, and therefore see that the general population has access to many brands in that market. They may not know your brand, and size of a typical American woman may be very different from the size of a typical Indian woman. And therefore, if you're launching, for example, an ethnic brand and taking it to the US, then you are very clear that, the Indian population there is looking to buy ethnic wear, and they would like more supply from the place where, the whole Indian wear comes from, which is here. And therefore, there's a market. So you have to really look at cross-border from that lens, that what is the right that I have to win in that market. And then enablers are there. There are enablers today where will help you take the goods there. You can ship from India. You can park your goods in those markets. But yes, we have launched a few of our brands globally, and we have had very good response. One of our portfolio brands, Chumbak, is another brand which has a lot of love from both people in India as well as Indians abroad, and that is something that we are planning to take in a big way to those markets, and not only sell to the Indians there, but anybody who loves things from India would be our audience when we take that brand abroad, because it has that match. But I can't say the same for every brand in the portfolio. So it depends on what the proposition is. And
typically, you run more or less a house of brands. Is that right?
Yeah.
So from a pure UI UX point of view, in terms of this wide range of brands, largely from within the same category, in this case, lifestyle and fashion, how do you really draw the cuts where there's distinctiveness for each one to come in, and yet there is commonalities, which is where the efficiencies come in. So how do you think that plays out, and where do you think are the learnings there?
So when we started with a blank slate, right? We said that let's not have our biases come in. So we built out scorecards for each category saying what's the propensity of a category to grow, what is the propensity to accept new brands, just like any D2C founder would do, right? That if I launch a brand in X versus Y, where is the acceptability, like just between men and women, right? The propensity for women to accept new brands in fashion is far higher, and the market is much more fragmented than typical menswear, where the larger brands tend to do better because a lot of men start with the first search or when they go to the filter, the first thing they put is brand, price, whereas women will put new, etc. Right? So there's a lot of data to tell that how are people going after. So once you start building a few brands in the portfolio, then you stop spraying and praying. Then you say that I have 2 brands in, say, ethnic wear. Can I build a portfolio because I am getting some traction on this? And the moment you have 5, you now know that I can build a sourcing supply chain. I can bring in capabilities which are more specific to this category and therefore start to build depth. And it's not something very unique to GOAT, but globally you would have seen that there are house of brands concepts in luxury, for example, LVMH, and therefore you would see the brands are distinctive, but then a lot of things are common. They go to the same department stores, they go to same factories. Similarly, if you take a Unilever, then they have divisions where you have multiple soap businesses, etc. So as you build a few brands, you start to build deeper capabilities and deeper portfolios. And therefore, you give up things where you do not have a start and focus more on what you have started on. So those are the choices you make every time you look at a new brand.
Please give Rishi a big round of applause. He's building a big company. Of course, he's done it only for one reason. You know why he's done so well in life? Any guesses? You know why he's done well in life? Or why he'll do well in life? You know the answer, right? No guesses? We went to the same best business school in India. It's called MDI. It was not a serious one, but I got in when the quality control was bad. His subsequent batches, his 2 batches younger to me. So Rishi, one thing I've been thinking about D2C, I know your journey. I was watching it on the BW Marketing Worlds while I was not in the room. I was doing something else upstairs. Eventually, all D2C brands are going into physical retail. I met a person today who helped D2C brands go offline. Now, eventually, it is good because customers want to touch and feel, but the operational efficiency, the margins that come from D2C, because it's direct to consumer, they will get eroded. What is your point of view on that?
Yeah, I started the talk by talking about the DNA of the company, right? If your DNA of the company is to be direct to consumer, have the data of the consumer, and therefore designed for that, you should watch out that any channel you expand to should not take away that DNA, right? So for example, offline has 2 components. You can get into trade, or department stores, or modern trade, or general trade, or you could open your own stores. The challenge with the department store is that you would be a very small part of their business, and therefore a lot will depend on what they want, and then you start changing your product to align with that, whether it's your pricing strategy or your promotion strategy, which should not hurt your main business, which was direct to consumer. If you're going through your own store, then you have all the things as you do in your own website, which is direct access to data, direct access to consumer. However, store means that you are investing upfront into a store. Inventory, 5 years. Inventory is in both cases, unless there is an outright buy. But you are actually taking a store for 5 years. Now you are putting capex into the store. And that means the agility that you had as a D2C brand, where if the market is down, you kind of reduce your CAC spends and therefore you're still fine. Here, then you need to be able to maintain or support that cost. So only expand to the extent where you know that this fixed cost is with me for the next 5 years. And if I have a very, very bad season or a bad few months, I still have to fund it, right? So therefore, typically for our brands, we have thought is a 30% is a good number, where offline could be a mix of own stores, etc. But then primarily 70% has to be online. and therefore it will keep our agility alive in terms of being lower overheads, faster change in the product mix, etc., and therefore still be a D2C brand. But like I said, it's a new upcoming area. Nobody has perfect answers. Everyone's working on thumb rules, and that's my
Very,
thumb rule.
very honest answer. My last question is, my second and last question is, you bought Chumbak. When you bought, I called you and I said, my daughter, who's 19, loves it. And, you know, I would, when they were smaller, my kids, I would go with them to the Chumbak store in GK1, buy stuff. What will you do in Chumbak? I don't want the whole strategy, nor will you give it. But what will you do in Chumbak to make it successful? And can there be a playbook to turning around such businesses which were primarily physical retail, went online, did well but not as well they should have, and now have been taken on by a house of brands approach that you have? How will you turn around Chumbak?
Yeah. So 2-3 main things. I think Chumbak, a couple of years back, had gone very aggressive offline strategy during the COVID shutdown and the pains that offline went through. They cut that down. So currently they are half and half, online, offline. Few things that we want to do differently is grow their online business. Their website sales is has a lot of potential, and having run direct to consumer or Shopify businesses for some of the other brands in our portfolio which are much lesser known, we know that Chumbak can be much bigger in that. It's just a different DNA than a typical offline company. So that's where we'll grow. Second is, I talked about going global. I think Chumbak has a huge opportunity going to other markets. And third is change. So consumer love is there. Like his daughter loves it, I'm sure his wife loves it. And we have seen that both mature and young customers love that brand. What we need to do a little tweak is bring in some serious shopping categories. Today, it's more about buying a lot of little products, but get into one or two very big categories where there can be high bill value, or people really go to the store as a destination rather than just landing up in a Chumbak store and picking up a few items which doesn't add too much or doesn't add a huge quantity to the bill value. So
Thank you,
these
Rishi.
are three things which...
So again, thank you for being so specific. Questions for Rishi. Rishi is here. He was a very successful entrepreneur in a large FMCG company in the garment domain. Then he was at Flipkart, heading the fashion business, which was the largest business. And over the last 3 years, Rishi's turned an entrepreneur, raised a lot of money, acquired a lot of brands. Goat is growing very fast, so you may want to ask Rishi some questions. Any questions for Rishi? No questions, the lunch effect, or Rishi was so good that he got it right. Please give Rishi Vasudev a big round of applause. Rishi, if we did the D2C conference 1 year from now, what are the changes that will happen? What are the changes you see happening over the next 12 months in the D2C space? Bullet point.
Okay, I think you would have read globally that, you know, a lot of the large marketplaces, I just saw that, I saw a number today where globally they said Shein grew 50%, Shopify sales grew 12%, Amazon grew 0%. So I think in next 1 year, growth will be one challenge. I think we had, there is some bit of rebaselining that's happening post the boom that happened in COVID. We saw some of it this year, but next year you're going to see that a lot of it is going to happen. So growth is going to be a challenge. A lot of people will be lured to get into different channels to somehow get growth, but be very clear. So keep your costs low so that you can manage that environment. So I think how to get growth, efficient growth, and therefore what's happening is, since everyone's spending on marketing, digital marketing, the cost per session is going up. So which means that cost of getting the same customers is now much higher. And therefore, being efficient both on front end and back end is something that you should talk about, that how to effectively use these.
And then House of Brands helps you in some way at the back end also. So you'd have separate plan and separate journeys for each brand, but broadly.
So back end efficiency is something that over years and with scale you can get better, and we can say clearly that we would be better than any individual brand. But front end is something where things are changing very fast. If you can crack the code on these channels, then these channels will have a problem, right? So there things are changing, but you should be having good advice close to you so that you know, yaar, CAC bahut upar ja raha hai, what should I do? Or should I have X percentage on platform versus my own site versus offline? So that's where if you have an ecosystem where a lot of advice is available through such conferences, then you know that what are the directions to take for my brand as I build it. And third is brand marketing is always something that you should love and talk about, because strong brands don't have problem. Brands which depend on a lot of pricing, discount, etc. to grow will always be challenged, and that you will always see the tussle between a brand and a retailer. Retailer wants you to bring down prices, a brand wants to take up prices, but somewhere you need to maintain a certain stature of the brand so that people can give you a premium for what you do. If you fall for the pricing, over time you will become commoditized, right? So that you need to really talk about.
Thank you, Rishi. And anybody else you admire in the D2 space, which is not your competition, or even if it's your, and why? That's the last question, and I'm wrapping it up.
Okay, I would not take an individual's name, but D2C founders is something that over the last 1 year of our journey, we have realized that D2C, see, when we started, we thought we'll take some of these brands. If founders are not continuing, we'll get somebody from corporate to run it. But we realized that the way D2C brand owners and founders operate is another level. I admire all of them because they're on top of hundreds of things, a lot of challenges, every night, sleepless nights, whether my brand will see the next morning, but they still continue to push.
So you're saying lots of entrepreneurial energy. Right now it's at a stage where you need entrepreneurial energy to fuel D2C brands.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes, because corporate guys are not tuned in that way.
And in frugal resources.
And frugal resources.
Biggest is the,
so I admire all of them because that's a very difficult journey. And
thank you, Rishi, for being authentic and being very honest and giving something to take away. Give him a bigger round of applause, please. Thank you, Rishi. All the best.